Hello, my name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and today I wanted to bring you my continuing in the series of the videos on the World Championship match, which was just held in Chennai, India. And this is Game 5. The challenger, Magnus Carlsen, is white, and Viswanathan Anand is black. This is a historic game because it's the very first decisive game of the match. The first 4 games have been drawn. In fact, the first 2 games were rather dull and very short draws drawn by repetition. I don't think either player really wanted to fight. Games 3 and 4 saw chances first for Anand to win, and then chances for Carlsen to win. White hasn't really proven any advantage in any of the games. This was the first decisive game. It was the key game of the match. Anand called it a heavy blow. In fact, he never seemed to recover after losing this game. And so this was obviously the all-important game. I think this is the most important game of the match, without a doubt. It was one of the most complicated, and I don't think Anand ever really regained his composure or regained his ability. In fact, he lost the next game because he said in one of the post-game interviews that he just totally wasn't able to sleep after this game, after this loss. So I think that pretty much says it all. So without any further ado, we'll jump right into this game. I'm going to try to keep the video short. I am working on a web page of this game. It is not completed yet, as I'm still working on my analysis. But once I've completed my analysis and I feel like my analysis is more or less fail-safe or completely exhaustive, then I'll be ready to post that on the internet. And when that's done, I will provide a link for the my webpage on this game. But anyway, and also until then, I'll also post all the links. I'll post the link to the Chessbase website article for this game, which includes a free analysis which you can download, the PGN file. But anyway, without any further ado, we'll go ahead and jump in the game. Again, Magnus Carlsen is white and Viswanathan Anand was black. This is the World Championship match, which was just the FIDE World Championship, or FIDE as some people say, World Championship match, which was just held in Chennai, India, in November of 2013. This is round 5. I believe it was played on the 15th of November. Anyway, without any further ado, we'll jump into the game. The first move is c4. I'm going to give that move an exclam just for a change of pace. Obviously, the first 2 games were, readies, and they just completely failed to impress. Magnus's first 2 games as white were readies. Not that the first 2 games were ready. Magnus was white in games 1 and game 3, and he espoused a ready and impressed no one with those. In fact, in the 3rd game, Anand had very clear chances to win that game. So anyway, e6. Anand's not trying to force anything. He's just trying to keep the center, and he's looking to transpose to a queen pawn opening. Many different systems black could play there. He could play knight f6 and try to play a king's Indian setup. He could play g6. He can play e5, which was a favorite of Karpov's, which kind of leads to a reverse sort of Sicilian type setup. Black can play c6 and d5 and try to transpose to the Slav. Virtually almost any opening is possible from here. If black wanted to, he could play e6 and d5 and c6 and f5 and try to play a Dutch stonewall. So I think just about any opening is possible after 1c4. And also too, you can play the symmetrical English here. You can play c4, c5. So just about any opening is possible there. And obviously transpositions are almost too many to count. c4, e6, d4. Without dwelling on it too much, Carlsen, he's not done well with, in the first 2 games as white with a ready. So now he seems happy to make it to a transpose to a queen pawn opening. d5, knight c3, c6. This is I don't know. I would call this a questionable decision in lieu of what happened. It's certainly perfectly sound. I mean, one of the things that might happen is that if white plays very passively, a move like e3 here, then black can simply play. I think he's totally justified in playing f5 and playing the stonewall because white's queen bishop will be closed in. So that's one idea there. This is basically the semi-Slav transposition to a semi-Slav. In other words, if white wanted to, he could play moves like knight f3. Well, let's just very quickly run through that. We'll just try to see knight f6, E3, knight BD7. And now we have the semi-Slav. This is a standard semi-Slav type of setup, okay? That's, just a standard line there. But anyway, in the actual game, Anand played C6 without playing knight F6 first. I wonder about the wisdom of that. I don't know what he was looking to try or what idea he had in mind. But anyway, he allows white to grab the whole center with the E4. And that's close to being an exclam. I mean, that's a very logical move. You're grabbing the whole center. The drawback to that is that if Anand had forced Carlsen's hand, then Carlsen would have been forced to play the Marshall Gambit, or what some people call the anti-Slav Gambit. But it's the Marshall Gambit in the Slav defense. It's an extremely heavily analyzed line. Kasparov has played it. A lot of top GMs have played it. I found a game on the internet in one of the databases from the Week in Chess where Nakamura was white, and he played that line against Tomaszewski. They debated that line, and that game was drawn, so that was a very fascinating game. But anyway, I'm not sure why Anand allowed white to play E4. Maybe he had something prepared here and something just didn't work out. But to me, it was a questionable decision because simply allowed white too free a hand in the center. D takes E4, knight takes E4, bishop to B4 check. And this is probably what Anand was going for. He's hoping for bishop to D2. The main line is bishop to D2. This is not what happened in the game, by the way, but we're just going to explore this very quickly. Queen takes D4, bishop takes B4, queen takes E4 check, bishop E2, knight A6. This is the main line. And if you want to see this line, you can look it up. It's in MCO 15, page 486, column number 68. And there's a lot more columns there too. But you can check that for all the lines and the notes related to that line. Again, going back to the actual game, C4, E6, D4, D5, knight C3, C6, E4, takes, bishop B4. White plays knight C3. That was Carlsen was white. And I'm pretty sure that this is what Carlsen intended because, I watched the video of this. The games came on like 3:30 at night. I mean, the time difference between Pensacola, Florida and Chennai, India was so great that basically I would have to stay up all night if I wanted to watch the games. I only did that once or twice. A lot of times I caught the tail ends of the game, the longer games because they were still going, because they carried on so long because I would be getting up and getting my girls ready for school, and I would check on the games. But several of the shorter games, the draws, they're already over by the time I got up in the morning. And I only stayed up once, I think, one time all night for one of the games. But anyway, Carlsen, I watched the video, the replay of this, of the video of this encounter, and Carlsen played this fairly rapidly, so I have no doubt this was something Carlsen had prepared. Knight C3, C5, that's the exclam, that's got to be the best move. Black's immediately putting pressure on white's center. A3. Bishop A5, that's the sharpest line. White can also exchange on C3, or, you can even take on D4. But bishop A5 is probably the best move there. White plays knight F3, knight F6, bishop E3, knight C6. And this is the key position for the entire opening, and it's the most important part of the opening. White's next move is a theoretical novelty. It's not in any of the books. I have several books on this line, on the Slav and the Slav Gambit, and I also have a couple of DVDs that cover the Slav. And in none of those is this move here suggested or played. Queen D3. This has got to be a TN. It's been played in amateur chess before, but it's not been played in grandmaster praxis ever. So I would say this is truly a theoretical novelty. It's the first time a matcher of any stature has used this move. It's also the first choice. 10 Queen D3 is the first choice of a lot of engines. Ribka, Houdini, Fritz, etc., etc., etc. So I think that and Carlsen again played this with not too much thought. I watched the video of this game, and he played this move pretty quickly. So I got to say that that this was part of his pre-match preparation. And so Anand is really the first person to be caught here. So anyway, C takes D4, knight takes D4, knight G4. Now Black didn't have to play this move. Black had played just about any number of moves, but Anand here decides to go after the bishop. One author gave that an exclam, said it's worth some trouble to track down White's dark squared bishop here. And I agree with that. I mean, it's certainly, to win the dark squared bishop is certainly something that's a good. And also, too, Black is going to, he's going to lose a little bit of time, but he's going to mess up White's pawn structure. So White castles queenside, knight takes e3. Now, queen takes is just a blunder, because after bishop b6, this knight's in a pin. You're threatening things like castles and e5, and White could just lose a piece. So to walk into that pin there is a very bad idea. So pawn takes e3 is completely forced there. Bishop c7. I don't know about that move. Let's see. That move probably wasn't the best move. According to the engines, the Deep Shredder and Fritz both say that White should just castle. I mean, Black should just castle here. But anyway, bishop c7, knight takes c6, b takes c6, queen takes d8 check. Here we see the point of Carlsen's preparation. But he's content to just trade pieces and just grind on Anand and endgame. And he did that a lot in this match. He seemed to be sort of trying to wear Anand down. He wasn't trying to go out for all-out tactical battles. He seemed to be more or less just trying to wear Anand down. And Carlsen is a very, very good in-game player. In fact, he's probably the best in-game player on the planet right now. His 2,800 plus rating is creeping up toward 2,900. Would certainly support that statement. And it seems to be a predilection of his style. When he was younger, he seemed to go in for tactical slugfests, but more and more lately, he seems very content to try to take someone to endgame and just grind on them in the endgame. Bishop takes d8. Now, that's not to say that Carlsen can't play tactical chess. I can show you dozens of games from the last 2 or 3 years where Carlsen's played quite brilliantly. When his opponent has forced him into an all-out fight, he's responded correctly and won some brilliant chess. In fact, one of my games on my website, my Game of the Month website, is a game between Nakamura and Carlsen from, I think, the early part of this year, January of this year. So you can find that game just use Google and you should find that game relatively quickly. But anyway, here Carlsen plays queen takes d8, bishop takes d8, bishop e2. It's a nice, good move. It's a practical move. It's a flexible move. It's a developing move. I think Fritz here likes g3 there. But anyway, bishop e2. King e7, that move has really got to truly be a dubious move. Certainly it's a inferior move, and it's certainly a bad idea there. It's not the losing move, not by a long shot, but the much simpler just bishop to b6 there was the simple move there. That's just going to give Black almost full equality, immediately getting counterplay on White's e-pawn. And that should have been the move that was played there. I don't know why he didn't play that move. Anand didn't play that move, but for whatever reason, after bishop e2, 16 bishop e2, Anand played 16 king e7. Just got to be an inferior move there. Bishop f3, bishop to d7, knight e4, bishop b6. That is also might be a slightly inferior move. Most of the engines that I checked, like Fritz 13, and again, I've run practically every engine known to man, Stockfish, Ribka, Houdini, 2.0. I don't have a Houdini 3 yet, but I have Houdini 2.0 all the way up to just about Deep Shredder. Any engine of any consequence that you can name, I've run it on this particular game, and I've done not just quick analysis, but spent hours and hours with it. So in fact, I've probably spent, actually, ever since this game was played, today's the 25th, so I've been analyzing this game literally every day since it was played. But anyway, bishop to b6 is a little bit of a problem because it's going to run into the roadblock with the pawns. Most of the engines seem to prefer bishop c7 there. Bishop b6. And now, of course, Carlsen plays c5. He's just going to go ahead and kick the bishop back. f5, that move is pretty much forced. To simply retreat there, that might be a more solid option, but again, that probably didn't appeal to Anand because his pawn on c6 remains locked on the same color of his bishop. He has no space. And, it just seems like that White he has much freer play. And the engines give White a big, big advantage there. f5 prevents that from happening, but Again, it winds up in an endgame where white is clearly a little bit better. C takes b6, f takes e4, b7. Again, the idea is so you don't, allow black to unify his pawns with pawn takes pawn there. Ra b8, bishop takes e4, rook takes b7. White's slightly better here. Both sides have, well, actually, white has 3 pawn islands, black has 4. But even that should not be enough. Computer analysis absolutely would best play. This game should be drawn. However, that just shows you the difference between computer analysis and human analysis. Any player worth his salt would tell you that white is clearly a little bit better here. He has 3 pawn islands to black's 4, and plus many of black's pawns are on light squares. White should probably try to play to fix black's pawns on light squares and just try to lock the game down. And for the most part, that's what Anand tries to avoid and what Carlsen tries to force there. Rook rhf1, rook b5. Something that Anand, he gets around to it later, but Anand should have maybe tried was just playing e5 there. I don't know why he didn't play e5 there. Again, back to the Capablanca principle, is when you have an endgame, you want to get as many pawns off the same color, the travel way of your bishop, so it's not restricted by pawns. So eventually he should maybe move his rook to a dark square, play c5 and play e5 and c5 just to get his pawns. That's a general idea. Of course, you have to analyze the tactics too, but that's, called the Capablanca principle. Capablanca, set forth the idea that when you have bishop and pawn endings, then you should try to move your pawns off the color of your bishop so they're not a bad bishop. Most of the time that's true. Rook b5, rook f4. I didn't like this move at all for Carlsen. Many of the engines suggest different things, rook f2 and et cetera, different moves there. But the problem with rook f4 there is black can play both e5 and g5 with a gain of time. So rook f4 had to be. It's interesting, but it's slightly inferior. I think both rook f2 and rook d4 were the engine approved moves, and those rook d4 was also a suggestion of a couple of GMs. The Grandmaster on ICC, the Internet Chess Club, suggested that. So those were better moves. Rook f4 doesn't quite. It's an interesting move. It's activating the rook. He's thinking about doubling on the f file. Rook to f7 is a problem. This rook can't move because the bishop takes h7, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem with rook f4 is black immediately plays g5. e5 might have been the slightly more solid move, but g5 certainly wasn't a bad idea there. Rook f3, h5. Now, Anand here is pushing all of his pawns, kind of loosens his king side a little bit. Not real thrilled with this concept, but he again, e5 is probably the move there. That's the one Fritz 13 says is best, and rook e5 is what Houdini likes. So anyway, we've got 2 different moves there. But h5, yeah, that's not terrible, but may not quite hit the nail dead on the head. Might not be the most accurate move. rdf1, bishop e8, bishop c2, rook c5. Again, rook e5 was probably the move. I'm not sure about rook c5. Rook f6, h4. Now here Anand's concept shows itself. He actually has some drawing ideas. He's fixed all these pawns. They're actually dangerous the further forward they are. Possibility of queen combinations, those kind of ideas. His king can easily, if the pieces get exchanged, his king can easily come over to swing over, say, f7, g6 to defend his or he can just king f6 if the rooks come off the board, to defend his g pawn. And the pawns are on dark squares, so they're not easily attacked, by white's pieces, especially as king bishop can never touch them on the dark squares. So Anand's trying to play, generally good ideas, and he hasn't totally lost it here. e4, that's a good move. Normally it's bad to put a pawn on the travel way of your bishop here, but this is a good move because A, it gains space, and B, it denies, black's bishop and rooks a lot of good squares. a5, again, that's the idea of pushing his pawns, and it's probably a good idea here because b4 is coming to kick the knight, kick the rook off the c5 square. So that was probably a good idea in the long run. King d2, rook b5. I'm not sure about that move. I would have put the rook on a dark square just on general principles. Maybe even rook e5. But anyway, rook b5, b3, bishop h5, king c3, rook c5 check, king b2, rook d8. Now Anand, g4 was the move the computer liked there. Several of the engines, especially Fritz 13, that's my main analysis engine. That's the one I've done several overnight analysis and spent hours and hours and hours with Fritz 13 on this game. And Fritz 13 likes g4, as does Houdini. Those are probably your two best available commercial engines you can buy. So anyway, those g4 is what, but rook d8 is not a bad move. Certainly a nice move because you know, rook to d2 and getting the rook activated, etc., etc., etc. Rook rook to f2, rook d4. And notice the black has gotten all his pieces to very active squares. One of the problems, though, that he's going to run to is now his bishop's going to come off the board. Rook h6, bishop to d1. Now, a lot of people, especially beginners, lower-rated players, ask me, why did White play this move, bishop to b1? I got several emails about this. What was this move about? Why did White play 36, bishop to b1? The problem is that after bishop takes bishop, rook takes bishop, the rooks double up and start checking the king from behind, and we're looking at a draw by perpetual. The king simply becomes too exposed. I think that's the main problem for White, for exchanging the bishops there. In other words, if White's trying to win, he's got to try to keep the bishops on. So bishop b1, rook b5, king c3, c5. Anand has to push one of his two pawns there. And in fact, Houdini likes c5 there, but again, the more logical move there to me was e5. That's what Fritz likes. But anyway, c5, rook b2, e5. And now Anand has managed to do what he needed to do eventually anyway, is to get most of his pawns to dark squares. The only drawback is now this rook can come behind a pawn and start winning pawns. Rook g6, a4. That's got to be a bad move there. The best move, all the engines, several other authors have already pointed out g4. Josh Friedel on the Chessbase website, his analysis, he calls that the simpler path. And if you're interested in that, I'll provide the link to the Chessbase article so you can download his analysis for free. But the engine indicated move was g4 there, and that certainly was much simpler there. a4 has to be regarded inferior, not because it's so bad, but simply because there was a much better move there. g4 was much, much easier for black to play and hold the line there. Rook takes g5. Now rook takes b3. This might actually have been wrong. Many of the Friedel and many of the other grandmasters are strangely silent here, but a takes b3 I think was a little bit better than rook takes b3. Again, when my web page is done, I'll post all my analysis there. I'm not going to get into an extremely detailed analysis of this game because that's not what my videos are all about. But anyway, a takes b3 was the better move, but that's not what was played there. Rook takes b3, check, rook takes b3. Bishop takes b3, rook takes e5 check, king d6, rook h5, rook d1, exclam. That's the best move. Taking the pawn on e4 wasn't even an option there. Black has to keep his pieces hyperactive there. e5 check, king d5. Now black's a pawn down here, but black's pieces are all on extremely good squares. So I would say in the long run that black should have no problems drawing from here. So anyway, White plays bishop h7. I give that move an exclam because Carlsen continues to find maybe the only way to continue to try to win. In other words, the idea is to check from behind and drive black's king back. Rook c1 check. That move's got to be a question mark. Not because it's so bad, but it's just the wrong idea. Rook a1 was just a simple endgame draw. And any of the engines can lead you from there. I mean, and again, when I post my analysis and make my web page, I'll provide a link to that web page. But rook and all the engines indicate that rook a1 was also the correct move there. So rook c1 check was simply the wrong move, simply because that rook a1 led to a very easy and relatively quick forced draw. And I don't think the variations are that hard to calculate. I think what happened though was Anand was simply becoming tired that Carlsen's strategy of simply wearing Anand down in an extremely long and complicated endgame is paying bonuses because Anand begins to make small mistakes here. King b2, rook g1. That was also might have been imprecise. All the engines recommend rook e1 there, so rook g1 might have been an imprecise move there. Bishop g8 check, king c6, Rook h6 check, king d7. Now here I've got to show you some analysis because this is extremely important. All the engines like king c7, and that was the correct move here. In fact, even several grandmasters missed the fact that Anand had a forced draw here. And this is really an amazing sequence, and you have to know your endgames very well. I have several books, many books on the endgames, hundreds of books. Well, I've got 5 bookcases, well actually more like 7, but I've got 5 bookcases that are full of nothing but chess books. And I have many of the books like Encyclopedia of Chess Endings, and many of the Rook and Pawn books that are available. I bought those over the years, so I have just about all the endgame books. But king c7 was the correct move there, and it's an amazing drawing resource. And again, you have to know your endgames, and also have to be able to check this on a table base. This is where a table base comes in handy if you have access to the internet, or if you have the table bases installed on your computer. But the correct move is bishop takes b3, a takes b3, rook takes h4, rook takes g2 check is correct. Black has to eliminate as many pawns as possible. King takes b3, rook e2, a4, rook takes e5, king c4, king b6, rook h6 check, king c7. That's almost an exclam. You've got to keep that king back. The king belongs on c7 or b7 in this endgame, and I'll explain why here in a minute. a5, king b7, h4, rook e4 check, king takes c5. Now all your engines are going to give the evaluation, like Fritz 13 here gives the evaluation of plus 4.73. However, when you turn on your table base engine, I have an engine just for table bases that came with a Chessbase product. It's like a 5 DVD set of all the table bases, and you get an engine with that. And it uses the table bases to analyze positions. The table base engine will analyze this as equal because it's simply a table-based draw. If you want to check that out for yourself, I'll post this link at the end of the in the little box just below the video that says show more, but it's www.shredderchess.com/online-chess/endgame-database.html. That is the online table base on the Shredder website where you can double check this analysis and double check this particular position. But if you bother to check that, you're going to find that it's correct. This is a book draw. It's a table-based draw, and basically now it's torture. If I have played this endgame against several masters. In fact, I've beaten 2 FMs in this ending. I beat a master named Ross Sprague and another FM down in South Florida many years ago. It's been about 8 years ago in this exact same ending, except I would think I was black and he was white, and I had the 2 rook pawns. And he was not able to hold the position, but that was mainly because I think not so much because he didn't know the drawing technique, but simply he didn't have enough time on his clock. I'm sure if he had had more time on his clock, he probably could have. He only had about 7 minutes to play the entire endgame, and it was just you need a little bit more time because you have to still do a little bit of analysis there. One player described trying to hold this as pure torture, but the computer does so easily, and if you want to again check that, you can just go to the Shredder website and load this. You can manually just drag and drop the pieces onto the correct squares and then just hit the OK button, and the Shredder chess will come up and tell you exactly, you can just follow whatever line interests you, but eventually you will get down to a book draw. So anyway, that pretty much that does it for the drawing line there. I wanted to show that though because it was really important to show that even as late as move 48 that black still had a possible draw there with king c7. But anyway, he plays king d7, and now bishop takes b3, a takes b3, king takes b3. Now the game is going to get down to a similar position, but it's not possible for black to draw because his king is out of position. The rook is cutting his king off from getting back to stop one of the pawns, and that's why this position is going to differ from the table-based drawn position. Rook takes g2, rook takes h4, king e6, a4, king takes e5, a5, king d6, rook h7. Give that move an exclam. Carlsen alertly notes that he cannot allow black's king to drop back to the c7, c6, or b7 squares, because once that happens, then if the king can go to the second rank, then it becomes a book draw. King d5, Probably the king should have stayed on c6, but I maybe it no longer matters. C4 check. He should not have pushed that pawn. Anyway, king c6, rook a2, a7, king c5, h4. And here Anand called it quit. He seemed extremely dazed after the game. He was unsure of exactly how and why he lost. Again, I'll post the link to the Chessbase website. There's a PGN analysis. You can download it for free. I've analyzed this game quite heavily myself. And when I finish my webpage, I will post a link to that. If you've enjoyed and that pretty much does it for my video of this game. And it's ran longer than a lot of the other videos will run, simply because this was an extremely complicated game, and I got into some analysis issues because that was important about exactly what went wrong for Anand in this endgame. But that pretty much does it for my video of Game 5 of the World Championship match. Game 5 of the World Championship match between Carlsen and Anand. Again, this was Game 5. It was Carlsen's first victory. It was a very key victory. I think it was the one that turned the tide of the match. Anand never seemed himself after this game. In fact, he said he couldn't sleep after this loss, and he attributed that as the main reason that he lost Game 6 also. But anyway, that pretty much does it for my video of this game. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you have a great day. If you like my videos and like my chess webpage, and you would like to make a donation, please go to the PayPal website and make a donation under my email address, which is LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.